So this is about the coming oil shock. And yes, there is one coming.
What do they say? Famous saying, can't print oil. We're going to start figuring that out. The problem, I think, my judgment, my assessment, Daniel, is that the United States has been living in this narrative fantasy land for so
Yes.
long that it doesn't, I'm not sure they really understand that this is physics at play. I think they can just continue to shape the narrative.
That's what I like to do. Is because if you look at the underlying economics there's physics to them. You can't create products out of nothing. You can't create food out of nothing. You can't create oil out of nothing. So yes, you can do a lot of bullshit in financial markets, but the underlying economics that can't be changed. That is reality.
And it'll all sort of pencil out. I just can't see how that can happen.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that that's the case, and there's a concurrent disconnection from reality in what we're talking about with this war thing, and we could talk forever about that one. But I want to stick with this one here. Now, one of the things President Trump says, apparently he is aware of some of these dynamics, and he announces a week or so ago, hey, you know what? Don't worry about it, because a year from now, we'll be doubling our oil output. But I saw in one of your previous shows this chart here, to where you show
This is a very interesting chart. It's U.S. oil production and its different sources. Conventional, this is the one you just poke a hole in the ground and it comes gushing out, and easy oil. And that's like basically tapered off. Then you have Alaska. That was developed later because it's really far north and not as easy to develop. But that also, as you can see, is going down. And then you have offshore, like oil rigs, deep water wells. And that there's still some room for it to go up, except the farther you get off coast, the deeper the well, the more expensive it becomes. And at some point, you need higher oil prices to justify offshore wells. So there is a whole bunch of oil production in different places in the world that can come online with higher oil prices, like permanently higher oil prices. So it's not like we'll just run out at one point, apart from this Iran crisis. But the last one, the one's really interesting, is right here. Tight oil, basically that's fracking. All this red is fracking. It started, it started even during the 2008 financial crisis. This right here, I think, delayed the collapse of the dollar by maybe 5 years. It made the United States an oil exporter. Before here, we were an oil importer. Then because of this, we became an oil exporter. That's how big the fracking boom was. But that's going down. And there is no new production going to come online because people make investments in oil based on the future price of oil, not the current price. And the future price of oil is still very low. So it won't be spurring any new projects with oil.
that okay, how exactly are you going to double our oil? Because for those who may not understand, just generally these green, yellow, and blue, that's kind of the traditional, I guess you call it cheap crude oil that we used to be really good and peaked in 1970. And those you continue to see over the years have continued to deteriorate and go down in terms of their production. The only thing that popped it up is that the tide oil, or the shale oil, as some call it,
Shale oil, fracking.
and it spiked up here pretty good in 2019. And this chart was from 2021, by the way, the one that I was able to find. But I think that actually peaked up a little bit higher. In fact, if you look at the EIA numbers here just last month, they show that we actually had a new record up to around 14 million barrels a day, et cetera. So that has eked up a little bit higher than this chart would have predicted. But still, we're going to be pretty limited on where we can go. Do you see the potential for us to meaningfully increase the amount of production in the United States in a year from now?
Well, if you can bring those two charts up first, that one. Yeah. So let's just talk this through. So yeah, the green, the yellow, the blue. So yellow and blue in this case are Alaska and offshore, which means Gulf of America now, I guess we call it. And green is everything else. And so these were conventional wells. And so what these meant was you stuck a straw straight in the ground. You know, it's more complicated than that. I'm doing it a disservice. But we hit a peak in 1970, and we took our drill rigs from 1970 just after that, Nixon put this whole program in. We're going to like drill for prosperity, basically drill, baby, drill. And we went, Daniel, from about 900 operating rigs to 4,500 operating rigs. And you see it kind of brought it back up there through about 1985, but it didn't achieve the prior peak, even though we quadrupled the effort, the intensity of drilling. And it was just all downhill from there, and it's been downhill. So I think, first, can we agree it's probably very unlikely that the green, the yellow, the blue are going to double? Okay.
Nope.
All right. Now that
Impossible.
means we're going to have to leave all the doubling up to the red, which is tight oil, which is shale. Again, brilliant story. But if we go to the second chart you put up, and you can see here that it's really a story of the Permian is the big heavy lifter in this story. The Eagle Ford, the Bakken. In fact, if we look at this very carefully, you'll find out that more than 100% of the growth in tight oil output since 2019 has come just from the Permian alone. All the other ones are down a little bit. The Permian's up a little bit more than they were down. So we're really talking about, Daniel, that when Trump says we're going to double oil output, it means the Permian is the only basin left that had even slight growth in it. But now just squint at the top line of this chart up here. I think COVID did its all big damage there in 2020 and had to recover from that. But if you look, really, since it's kind of like you can sort of see it's bouncing along. It's not moving up aggressively like it used to. It's been bouncing along. And in fact, the all-time record output was October of 2025. We're now 7 months.
Yes, because I had to look it up. The Permian Basin, that's this. Permian Shale basis in Texas. So that is all this increase right here.
It's past that, 8 months, whatever we're at. And we're getting less out of the ground today than we were in October. So there's a lot of analysts out there, people I talk to who really model this, saying that, yeah, there's plenty of oil there, but we're not going to get more out. So for Trump to say we're going to double, next question is where?
Well, I wish I could zoom this in a little bit.
Trump says other things like we're winning the Iran war. Lately, at least, he's complete nonsense is coming out of his mouth more than truth.
The technology I have here, but I guess from that October point, you see all the lines, all the dark blue lines are all trending downwards since where they have been here. This is the breaking news that ExxonMobil and Chevron have defied calls from the White House to increase production. They're saying, no, we're not going to do that. In fact, I think before this, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the EIA prior to the start of this war had already projected either flat or slightly declining for 2027 in the United States, because, and I wonder if you can just kind of give a real simplistic explanation. You can't just like walk out to the tap and turn it on higher and get more out.
Because the high oil prices we're having right now, everyone in the world knows it's artificial. It's because of the closure of Strait of Hormuz. And if you start oil projects expecting $150 oil for the next 5 years, that's not going to work out, because yes, they're high, and as in this video we're going to see, they're probably going a lot higher, but that's for this year. Unless the entire Gulf goes up in flames and all the oil infrastructure there is destroyed. If that happens, then yes, you might start seeing a lot of new projects in other places, because it'll take a while for they can become profitable before the Gulf recovers.
It takes a lot of investment today to get oil out in some number of years from now.
Well, it does. And so it's funny they said resisted, because I'm pretty sure what Exxon and Chevron said is, hey, there are operational realities here, and we can't just do that, right? Here's why. Because believe me, if they could pump more, they would. That's their business. They're trying to maximize capital, So if you got it, you pump it. But they have realities, and so they have to manage things. So Exxon has a big footprint in the Permian. They bought up a lot of shale companies. And so their job is to try and optimize, like, how do I get the most oil out of this? It's very delicate. And if they over drill it and reduce the pressure, they might end up damaging the field, getting less out. So it's a super complex business, how they manage fields, pressures, and all that stuff, drill programs. So they have all those running. And the other problem here is that there's one more thing we have to talk about, the oil futures market.
Yes.
So yes, if you see oil's around $100 a barrel today, you'd say, wow, that's going to be super stimulative for these companies. They should just go out and start drilling. But like you mentioned, they don't drill for the oil price today. They look at the futures curve and they say, what's oil?
I mean, any project that starts today for oil is going to be a year, 2 years down the road come online. And the price of oil now doesn't matter. The price of when those production facilities come online price of oil then matters. And if the Strait of Hormuz opens up right now, then a year from now, oil will have fallen probably close to its previous level. Probably still be on the higher side, maybe 80, but it's nowhere near the current price. And there's a lot of places where like $80 a barrel is not really, it costs them nearly that much. Like really deep water wells, for example, those are really costly to set up. And it's not really worth it for $80 a barrel of oil, especially if you have 80, it might fall to 60 later on, and then you're probably underwater. So you need high prices sustained for that feel confident it'll be sustained for a long period of time to start investing in the pricier oil wells.
Still selling for in a year when this well comes online. And there, Daniel, it's all the way back to $70 a barrel. It's not worth it to them to even drill faster or more at this point in time, because for some reason, the oil markets have decided that oil's going to just go back in price a year from now. They don't believe it. The head of Diamondback Energy said our futures market, oil futures market, is lying to us. They know the reality on the ground. They're wondering. So this manipulation of markets, again, listen, go ahead and manipulate gold all you want. It doesn't, nothing really happens.
He knows. Gold is the most manipulated commodity out of them all by far, and for the longest period of time, going back decades. He knows, but because they sell futures and gold that are far exceeding the amount of gold that could ever be delivered, and they even change delivery rules sometimes when they need to avoid having to deliver. It's a complete mess there, and that complete mess there is apparently now happening in the oil market. Probably because of derivatives, like I've said before. They can't, too many important financial institutions would go under if they allowed the price of oil to go up too fast in the futures market.
Happens. It sits on a shelf. But because we take oil out of the ground and set it on fire, a couple steps in between, it's not the same beast at all, but they're managing it like it's just another market function that they can control. And the problem is that it sends the wrong signals, the wrong incentives. Oil companies aren't going to.
When the price of commodity is lower than it should be, it encourages overconsumption. People, it's cheap. They use no reason to hold back. They use more of it than they need to. And then that's not the reality. If there's actually a shortage of supply and you have the prices too low, that shortage of supply gets worse and worse until the point where there's panic and the price shoots up. And that's going to happen in oil.
Going to expand their drilling, and we're going to get into a severe shortage later on. But some people are questioning, like, is that a feature or a bug? Because then they're like, okay, well, Palantir is going to tell you how much oil.
No, you don't think it's not part of some grand conspiracy. Like the manipulation of price of oil has it's just simple to do with derivatives. You have banks that sell put and call options. It's basically, if I need a graph, call and put options. Let's say that you're right here in this point in time, and you're a bank. A way to make a bunch of money. You sell put options down here for strike prices like around 50. That means if at this date in the future the price is below 50, whoever buys that makes money. But if it's above, they get nothing. If it's above, the bank just gets to keep the money the guy paid for a put. And you do the same thing. You sell call options for like $90 barrel oil in the future. And as long as the price stays stable, it's just a fee. You just collect money. These call and put options, you can think of one way to use them is like insurance or hedge. Like if you're worried that the price of oil will collapse, you buy some put options in the future. And if it collapses, those put options make money and they protect you from losses somewhere else. Same thing with call options. You're a company that's worried you'll struggle under high oil prices in the future, you buy a call option. And if at that point of the call contract, oil is above that, you make a lot of money. And in that way, it protects you. For the bank that's selling this, it's just free money, as long as the price of oil doesn't go above or below that band where they're selling call and put options. And if you are a major U.S. bank who has the U.S. government backing you and can bail you out if the market does something like the Iran war happens, and now the prices of oil is way up here, and you really can't afford to pay out on all these derivative contracts, all these call options that are suddenly in the money, well then, like last option expiration, that's a month ago, let's go 1 month. Option expiration was the 20th, like right here. See this huge dip down here? That is when one huge batch of options on Wall Street expired. On the 17th right here. And Trump came out, the ceasefire was announced, and Trump declared victory, said all his lies about they'd agreed to give their uranium and all that, and price of oil collapsed that day. Well, that was when all those bets on Wall Street, it's the day that the call options come due. And a lot of options, like if you had an option at 100, at 95, a call option, that instantly became worthless, and the bank was off the hook. That is what the manipulation in oil is going on right now. It's, banks or other financial players that have sold a lot of call options up here, and they need to keep price of oil at 100 or lower to avoid going under, going bankrupt, and the financial system with it. So in a way, they get to sell these call and put options and make money from them. And if they get into trouble, you have the entire government and media that rallies to bail them out and keep the price of oil down, because otherwise financial system collapses. Because these, like JP Morgan is so big, we can't afford to let it collapse.
Well, you get to burn this week, Daniel, or something like that. It's crazy where we've gotten to.
And the side consequence of that is right now, oil prices, like for example, real oil prices are 140. The future market is at 100. It gives wrong signal to anyone who's looking at the price of oil, and it gives bad information, leading to overconsumption. And at first, the future price of oil does have an impact on the spot price of oil. So if it's lower, it will also make the physical price of oil just lower than it should be too. Because a lot of people, they would see the futures market and say, well, all oil is going to be cheaper in the future, so why would I pay $140 now for a barrel of oil? I'll just wait, because the futures market is telling me it'll be lower. And so you have a lot of delayed purchases. And those delayed purchases means that the current spot price of oil ends up being lower. If the future price of oil, for example, was $200 a barrel, and what that would do, much higher than the spot price, the now physical price of oil, then everyone would be looking, oh my God, it's going to be more expensive in the future. I should secure oil right now. And you'd already have $170 a barrel in the physical market.
At this point in time, it's the most ignorant of reality that I've ever seen things be.
And for the moment, I want to stick with the unicorns and rainbows magic deal that the war gets over today. What do you think, given the proclivity to continue with magic or manipulation of the markets, but the physical reality is going to impose upon that? In that scenario, what, say, the August, September, the fall, the end of the summer, start of the fall, what can we expect, or what do you project?
The summer. Like it's oil, the tankers, the speed they move, there's a month delay basically, or a month and a half delay. That's gone. And now you have to draw down reserves. It's by this summer, gas prices will be over $6 a barrel in a lot of states. It'll be an average, maybe in California, you might see $7 oil, because they're already hitting $6 now. So you're going to see $7 oil, $7 gasoline per gallon in California this summer, guaranteed.
Rather, is going to be an oil price in the magic scenario?
Well, I mean, we clearly have to get somewhere between 200 and 300 to begin balancing supply and demand, maybe higher. So if we got...
So you hear that? Somewhere between 200 and 300 to actually balance supply and demand, given all the oil we've lost from the closure of Strait of Hormuz. I will add that there is, like, all the reserves that governments are releasing. So that does influence it. So it's probably closer to 200 side. Without government reserves, like releases from, for example, the U.S. strategic oil reserves, it would be 300. But with those releases, I think 200 is what we're heading for in the summer and fall. $200 a barrel of oil.
To some magic situation where everything opened up. As I mentioned, by fall, we're still going to be, best case, still short 2 to 3 million barrels a day because of all the damage and fixing stuff and all that that's going to happen. But the other thing I have to talk about here is that we've been talking about oil. Of course, LNG, liquefied natural gas, 20% of the world's supply of that is missing. And the United States can't make all that up. And Australia, the other exporters cannot possibly make it all up. So that's also beginning to really bite. But it goes beyond that. I'm going to show a chart now. This is what's been missing.
This is another great chart. Another reason I absolutely wanted to react to this video is this is all the ships that pass through the Strait of Hormuz. And notice that it drops down to nearly nothing down here. So you can see it's not just bulk carriers. That's the oil. And you see how there's still some oil? That's because Iran was still exporting some oil. But all these other types of ships, they've dropped down to zero, basically. And he's going to explain what these are.
Out of the Strait of Hormuz, and these are all different types of ships. So the green on the bottom, bulk carriers. What are they doing? Well, they're bringing stuff like fertilizer, urea fertilizer, sulfur, maybe aluminum, lots of things missing from the Gulf. So this isn't just oil. This is a poly crisis. We're missing as well this next block, the
bulk carriers. Okay, I was wrong about that. I thought that it'd been oil tankers that Iran had been letting through the straits, exporting its oil, or you can't even see that crude oil tankers. There should still be some, because during the first month and a half, Iran exported a lot of oil.
Prod tankers, so all the chemical products. There are all these big giant refineries like the Al Abqaiq in Saudi Arabia, and the big one in Iran, making lots of what are called precursor chemicals. They're making naphtha, ethylene, all these other things that go into and become plastics and everything. It's so impossible to predict what's missing. But this is how many ships have been passing down here, this little red circle. This is what it used to be. Next, container ships. Food coming into the Gulf. They're starting to run into issues around not missing food. Also, anything else.
Thing is, food... It's not like it. Food is unlike crude, which needs to be moved in huge super tankers. It's different. You can still bring in food supplies here and move stuff by truck. So it's not like the food is completely cut off to these areas. It's just much more costly to bring it, unload here on this side, and then bring it over by land. And if you're somewhere like Bahrain that has this bridge here, it has to go all the way around it. Starts becoming a long trip.
It comes out in containers. And then here, finally, we have the crude oil tankers missing, then LNG tankers, and finally the LPG tankers, liquefied petroleum gas. And that's what, a lot of the world uses, India in particular, Asia, for cooking and other uses. So this is what's missing, and it's helium. 33% of the world's supply gone. We need that for chips. Russia also.
That's the biggest in terms of quantity of the world, like helium and fertilizer. 35% of the world's fertilizer came through this. And like you said, what was it? 31% of the world's helium. That's huge of the entire world. And the ramifications, I mean, companies will have to shut down. Prices will have to go up. It's bad.
Pulled back its exports of helium because it's a byproduct, if you will, of natural gas extraction. And so they're preserving their own to make fiber optics. I think you know why. And we're missing sulfur, sulfuric acid. We're already seeing impacts in the mining operations because they use sulfuric acid to heat leach things like copper out. We're seeing aluminum shortfalls in aluminum price hikes. So this right here, you just squint at it, all of this missing stuff, Daniel, represents what we'll call the pig and the python. So even if magic breaks out tonight, what we're going to see is that the whole system's going to have to work through all of those.
Yes. You can draw a line up here to 2 months of the year. All the ships that should have gone through, that's missing. That's just missing from the global economy. And there's no way that's going to have a small impact. And considering we have several more months probably of this this shutdown, it's the calm before the storm, in that all this damage takes time to work its way through the global economy. First, it's a delay in how long it takes the ships to get to where they were going. Like in some cases, it was like a month and a half. Right now, just about right now, all the ships have finally reached. All the ships that were leaving. These ships here, the last ones that left on the last day it was open, they've now all arrived. So we're just getting to the point where companies are in the position where they're not getting their product and their material, and will have to maybe shut down and raise their prices because buying replacement is now expensive. And it's there's a delay. Again, companies, although we're in just-in-time inventory nearly everywhere, they still have a half a month probably supply on hand. So that half a month supply plus the month and a half takes tankers to get most places. We're just at the start of the impact of this economically.
What we're going to see is that the whole system's going to have to work through all of those disruptions and all of those key, very upstream precursor chemicals and products that go into everything that we call our modern economy. We've never experienced a shock like this and across so many different vectors at once. So every one of those things I just mentioned could have its own entire analysis and would be its own crisis. Together, well, we don't know. I'm pretty sure that printing fake oil, paper oil, is not the answer.
And you have to add to that Ukrainian strikes on, well, EU strikes on Russian oil infrastructure, and I don't know how successful they are. I don't think they've crippled it, but they're having an impact. They're hurting Russian oil exports, and so that's another factor making this all worse.
Answer.
Well, let's just take a look at a couple of other things. So did I understand you correctly to say that in the magic scenario, by the fall, if things are going to be brought into actual balance, it'll have to be somewhere around $200 a barrel?
Or more.
Lord have mercy. Okay, well, that's scary, because now we're going to look at in the remainder of the time we have here quickly two other scenarios.
Yeah, $200 barrel oil. That's $7 average gas price at the pump, or like closer to $7.50, I think. Average gas price at the pump across the United States. In California, of course, it'll be like $8.50 a gallon, because they're always more expensive there.
Because the magic is the least likely to happen. We all hope it does. It's not zero, but it's probably not very high. The other two are either one, President Trump just says, you know what, that chart out there, the Washington Post piece showed you where everybody's saying, hey, you know what, time is on our side. We can outlast the other. So they continue on. So scenario two is that the blockade continues on. And let's say it's a month from now, just 1 month from now. What does that do? Meaning that nothing has changed at all. What does that do to September?
Well, it just makes it a lot worse. And as the blockade goes on, again, the pressure is building. The clock is ticking. And I believe it's ticking more loudly on our side than Iran's side. Iran's pain tolerance.
Absolutely. And Iran had a month and a half grace period where it still got to export its oil at record high prices and build up, was it like 14 billion or more of cash during that period? So we started our blockade of Iranian oil a month and a half late. And the amount of pain they're putting on us, they put 2 months of pain on the global economy through their control of the Strait of Hormuz. We've put 3 weeks of pressure on Iran. It's not even. They have a head start.
It's pretty high. They demonstrated that in the Iran-Iraq war. They're this close to their goal that they've been preparing for 40 years. I don't think they're just going to back down because, things got a little tight for them. They're ready.
And I seriously believe there's a real possibility that China sails in its ships, its navy, towards Strait of Hormuz and starts escorting tankers full of oil back to China and daring the United States to stop them. Why wouldn't they? If they can get, when the price of oil is $200 a barrel, like he said, and they can go into Iran and buy oil far cheaper than that and then escort it back with their military, why wouldn't they?
For this, I believe the Iranian pain.
And would we stop them? Would we when we're already like in a conflict with Russia via Ukraine, with Iran, would we start a war with China by trying to stop them from getting their oil?
Tolerance is very high. I think ours is set around $5 a gallon national average price. I think that's about does it. And so
that's within next month, probably.
The other ticking clock for Trump, of course, is the elections coming up in November, right? So this has to be resolved soon. And, we've seen them come out with this wall of,
That's one reason I'm absolutely convinced Trump politically finished is that closure. You saw that damage. There's just 2 months so far. That's enough. That's enough to cost him the midterms, probably. Another month just to make it sure that he's going to be hurt. There's no way out for him, especially since Strait of Hormuz is probably going to remain closed another 2-3 months, 4 months, and then till we actually start seeing like $250 oil in the cash market, and then countries are going to start trying to strong arm Trump into capitulating to Iran, and you have 5 months the Strait of Hormuz closed, plus the humiliating defeat of Trump surrendering to Iran. Yeah, Trump doesn't recover for that. The other alternative is that he escalates and the entire Middle East goes up in flames, and we have $300 a barrel oil right now.
Consider propaganda to say, oh, this is hurting Iran really badly. They're going to have to fold soon. Now, that sounds like a hope strategy to me. We hope that they're going to fold soon because of this pressure we're putting on them. Maybe.
Yes. Trump White House is operating on wishful thinking right now. Every time Trump says, we've won, we're winning bigly in Iran, that's just pure wishful thinking. We had lost the moment we bombed the supreme leader.
Maybe, maybe not. Hope is a terrible strategy, investing, and probably in this situation. The other problem that we're going to be facing here is that the wild card in all of this, because it was just a statement that came out on Israel's Channel 12 that said, they feel like they announced, who knows what the reality is. They announced that they had been given the green light to go ahead and attack Iran's energy infrastructure and its power plants because they had determined somehow that the Iranian negotiations were going well. Now, whether that's true or not, if we all know that there's always the chance that Israel may just decide to get this all going in a kinetic fashion again. There may be IRGC people who think.
There are reports that Israel is getting a lot of ammunitions and is all set to go again. We'll have to see. Again, Trump knows, he should know at least by now, that Iran is not going to give him the victory he wants right now. They have all the leverage. And so his options is one, twiddling his thumb, and just hoping his blockade makes them change their negotiating stance. It won't. Or two, start firing bombs and hoping that will change their stance. It won't. But it's got to be gnawing at him. The stress must be incredible to do something, because every day the Strait of Hormuz remains closed, he's closer to being politically finished. And all his options to try to prevent that just accelerate the end of his political career.
Get it going kinetic again. If it goes kinetic again, the reason I'm raising all this is that what Iran has said is like, well, we're going to target several things here. First, American ships, but also the East-West pipeline that is supplying 3 to 4 million barrels a day of.
There are two pipelines that are critical with regard to Strait of Hormuz. One, Saudi Arabia has this pipeline like this, basically, and where they can load 2 million barrels a day, I believe, bring it over here and then load it up on ships, bypassing the Strait of Hormuz. Then there's another oil pipeline that's from, I think, this way, and brings oil from here. I think it's a smaller one. It's like, he'll talk about the exact amounts, but these two pipelines, if Iran is perfectly capable of sending drones and destroying the pumps, destroying the pipes, and shutting them down, and then the world loses another couple million barrels of oil per day.
Relief crude coming out of Saudi Arabia to the Yanbu port in the Red Sea. They're going to shut down the Fujairah pipeline and port that's getting more out through Oman, and possibly even the Strait over there on the Red Sea. So if they did that, you can take whatever I've just told you and just double it, because that would be another 10 million barrels a day that's now missing in action.
Well, that's not a good and a good number there. And you kind of talked about it a little bit here, but I'll just add the option number 3 is
Yeah, I guess they're getting more oil out of that than I expected. Maybe the Oman pipeline was bigger, or maybe they've increased the flow through the pipelines.
this, whether it's Israel or the United States, as Trump says, you know what? I'm just gonna push the button here, and we're gonna try one more time for the kinetic version here. And I know, because I've got some sources, connections into those who are deployed into the tip of this, and they all say we're all cocked and loaded and ready. We've in fact seen some information out today. It says that there's continued.
You've heard the figures of 20% of the world's oil goes through the Strait of Hormuz. Well, if you include shutting down those pipelines, too, it's closer to 23% of the world's oil then, or closer to 25% even.
To be a continued flow of C-17, C-5, C-130 transports, bringing all kinds of additional ammunition and stockpiles, KC-130 tankers. Everything is in place that if President Trump gives that order, that it'll again launch in. So what happens to that September if the U.S. says, no, we're going to go in, we're going to pound them, and then Iran does what it has already claimed, and they strike all the GCC and Israeli energy sources? What does that do to September?
It just pushes it out who knows how far. So there's only a certain amount of damage you can possibly fix. So far, Iran has been engaged, as you know, in tit for tat. And I think pretty effectively, right?
I'll just say this now. If Iran does blow up all the oil infrastructure across the Gulf, it doesn't change the price of oil that much in fall of this year, because that production wasn't getting through the Strait of Hormuz anyway. It was blowing up an oil production oil platform that's not producing oil doesn't have a big effect. What it does change is the price of oil next year, and the year after that, and the year after that, because it takes at least 3 years to get these places back online, more like 3 to 5, depending on what we're talking about. And so that means it means we have $200 oil for, or even higher, probably higher, because I said $200. That's based on countries releasing their reserves, and that's only this year. So next year you're going to have higher than that, like a $300 oil for the next 5 years. Does that sound fun?
If we hit one of their desal plants, they hit. If Iran came in and bombed that big oil depot just south of Tehran, and so Iran hit some other depots in the GCC area. So they've been playing tit for tat, but they've promised that if this goes on again, that this next tat is going to be very damaging. And in this tit for tat, they've been a little bit gloves off on actually hitting the core of the refinery complex. Yeah, if you hit the big tanks and
yes, because all these oil facilities, like I'll just go into Cargill as an example. It doesn't actually produce the oil here, but it has all these little tanks to hold oil for export. And if you send a drone into one of these tanks, it creates a big explosion, lots of smoke. It's very visible damage, and you have people seeing the smoke from miles around. It has psychological impact. But a tank, that's fairly easy to replace. It's not that costly. It's not 3 to 5 years for a tank. That's a matter of months to replace a tank. Maybe even faster if it's only 1 or 2. But so that's what they've been doing. They've been hitting non-core things that do big explosions, but don't take 3 to 5 years to replace. But that could change if the conflict starts up again.
They catch very dramatically on fire and make lots of black smoke. Those are relatively easily replaced. But if you hit the cracking towers or the more sensitive pieces of the refining trains, then those can take a long time to rebuild. They're all custom.
And even more so if a lot of them are destroyed at the same time, because the places that can make more of them, there's a limit to how much they can produce. And so they're really complex to build. And so replacing one of them, if only one of the region gets destroyed, that it could be replaced in the fast side. If all of them are destroyed, then they need to be produced one at a time, and it could take maybe upwards of 5 years, maybe 6 years in some cases. it's they're hard to replace.
Custom built, right? And it would take a while to get all that done. So,
And I'm
if
sorry, when you take a
this
while,
gets-
6 months,
Yeah.
2 years.
it would probably take a year, but that's under normal circumstances, not when you have to replace 8 of them or 10 of them or 100 of them.
Exactly. A year under normal circumstances. One of them, if you're just replacing one of them a year, but you're replacing 2 of them, and there's only one place in the world that makes them, or I think there might be more than one, but it's not many. I think some places in Southeast Asia specialize in it, and they can only make a certain amount at a time. And the more you have to replace, well, you have to build one first, then another, sequentially. And so the amount of time it takes to bring everything back online grows.
All at once, right? The capacity just isn't there to really build those quickly, because the places that build these aren't that many, you know. And so
Exactly.
if we get to openly destroying the direct infrastructure, I don't think there's any recovery from this. And you have to measure it in years. And then we have to start asking questions: what happens to our financial markets?
Oh, I think if the entire Gulf goes up in smoke, I think a decade before the full impact of it plays out. The beginning first 5 years are the worst by far, but it'll have long lasting impacts in a lot of places that companies go under. It take full 10 years to get back to where we were if the Gulf goes up in smoke.
When we're printing money like crazy, spending.
Yeah, but the dollar will have collapsed before that, before there will be a full recovery. Because, the amount of pressure it'll put on the U.S. financial system if the entire Gulf goes up in smoke, it'll drastically accelerate the timetable for the collapse of the dollar.
Money like crazy, and there's an actual shortage on top of that. It's going to be the biggest inflation we've ever seen.
Yes.
And what does that look like in terms of an average person's daily life in the United States? Is it just more when they fill up, or what other impacts could that have?
Well, the direct impacts are going to simply be anything that's missing in action. Like there's just, we didn't make enough plastic, so we don't make enough plastic bags, so we couldn't bag the potatoes in this harvest. Like there'll be lots of food inflation, obviously. There'll be regular energy inflation, just gas at the pump, all of that. But those have these secondary effects that bleed into everything because, oil's such an...
Fuel goes up, food goes up. Yeah, you have to pay higher salaries. It costs you more to move stuff. Your factories, it costs you more to run machinery. Electricity costs go up. Everything goes up. And you either pass those costs on, and that means higher prices for the consumer. And if it's not something where you can pass the prices on, then you go out of business and you fire all your workers. And now you have unemployed people that are facing higher prices. It's called stagflation. It sucks.
Important component of the manufacturing and shipping. So pretty much everything just dials up. This gets wonky really quickly because the Fed was trying to get on an interest rate cutting program, and you can't convince people to buy bonds at 4% if inflation's at 8 or 9 or 10%.
Yes, because then you're just losing money. Might as well buy gold, something that goes up with inflation.
I actually think we're facing a situation where we could be heading into the high double-digit inflation over the next 2 years under that scenario, where we get to 18-20% inflation.
Yes, I've said we're going to enter an inflationary spiral like we did in the 1980s. I should keep these graphs handy to be able to bring up whenever I want. Well, it's UK historical inflation, but inflation tracks the same across the United States and Britain pretty much. So this inflationary spiral, stagflation, this is what we're heading to again, except this going down, that's not going to happen again. What's going to happen with this time, this inflation spiral, and then instead of going down at the end for the dollar, that would be the peak. It goes up even faster. That's what we're heading to this time. Hyperinflation. What happened here, this decrease in inflation, that had to do with Iran-Contra and dollarization of the world. It was a one-time event. It cannot be reproduced. And basically US still printed money, but like crazy. But they figured out that if you print $1 billion and that $1 billion disappears overseas because CIA smuggles cocaine in and then smuggles huge billions of dollars out, basically, that happens, then you can bring down inflation. And places like Nicaragua end up using the US dollar. And that's why a large part of the world, like from Iraq, basically all the countries who destabilized their governments use the US dollar. Somalia, of course, we know Somalia fraud, being exporting huge amount of dollars back to that place. And all those places use the dollar. That is how we killed inflation in the 1980s, is by dollarizing the world. We did it in the name of fighting communism. We went around to all these countries and completely destabilized their governments and destroyed their currencies of all these supposedly socialist allies of the Soviet Union. And then we replaced their currencies with dollars. Dollars that were CIA got there by trafficking heroin and cocaine. That is how we saved the dollar in the 1980s. But you can't reproduce that. This time around, when we enter this inflationary spirals, what'll happen is all these countries, like Iraq right now, is tied to the uses US dollar as their currency. But when they start having 20% inflation because the dollar is losing all its value, you know what they're going to do? They're going to say, fuck the dollar. We're going to print our own currency. We can do something better than 20% inflation. And all the dollars in circulation in Iraq, what happens to them? Well, they travel to all the other places still using the US dollars and accelerate inflation in those places, and putting pressure on those places to de-dollarize and get rid of the rapidly declining value dollar. And then that becomes a cascade. After country starts, banning the dollar, or they don't even need to ban it. It will be losing the value so increasingly fast that people will switch to new currencies proposed by the governments like Iraq, or other currencies like any other currencies, or gold. They'll just be, people will start using lots and lots less dollars. And those dollars eventually, all the dollars, like 95% of the dollars that have been printed, like the $100 bills, for example, are outside the United States. So that means only 5% are in the United States right now. What happens when the supply of dollars increases 20-fold in the United States? Because that's what slowly happens as places around the world de-dollarize and send their dollars back home to the United States. That is why last time, we avoided, we got inflation down by spreading our dollars all across the world. This time, when we enter this inflationary spiral, all those dollars that we spread back in the 1980s are going to come back to the United States, and they're going to push the dollar to the moon in terms of losing its value. Just explain the big picture thing, what we're heading for.
Wow.
At that point,
wow.
Everything. Mortgages, auto loans, everything gets impacted at that point in ways that are almost impossible to predict. But we just had Jamie Dimon come out, and we also had Hank Paulson come out in the last week, and both of them said, this what's happening in the bond market could be, and I'm quoting directly here, terrible.
That's obviously, because inflation, that you don't want to be holding bonds when there's inflation, because you're basically losing money. You're getting like 3% in interest, and inflation's at 6%. You're basically losing 3% of value of the money you have in the bond. It's so you demand a 6% return or higher, probably 7%, because you want to actually make some money. And so having higher inflation drives up the yields on bonds. And if you didn't know, the United States borrows a lot of money, pays a lot in interest. And if interest rates go up, it becomes a debt spiral where you end up paying most of your tax revenue on servicing the debt. And so you have to borrow even more to fund your government, and you end up like Zimbabwe.
Hyperbolic language for guys who are usually pretty diplomatic. There's a lot of rumblings now that our credit markets could really get destroyed.
They will get destroyed. This Zimbabwe didn't have a huge bond market. Its destruction there was, but in the United States, it's going to be the largest destruction of wealth event in the history of mankind when the U.S. dollar goes down, just because of the size of our financial markets, and stock markets. It's going to be unprecedented. Just nothing like it. In terms of people like the 1% of America, like 99% of their wealth is going to be wiped out. I'm maybe exaggerating, maybe more like 80%, but still huge. So many people, so many boomers that have all these savings. It's just going to go up in smoke. Like all that money Saudi Arabia supposedly has for the United States, worth goes down to zero as the dollar collapses. It's going to be something. It's going to be not pleasant to live through, but it'll be interesting.
That's very sobering. And one would imagine, I mean, you said, I mean, those are public statements. One can only imagine that behind the scenes in the White House, there's got to be alarm bells going on. I know that for the military side, I have pretty good in sources that say even all the way up to the Joint Chiefs of Staff level that all the commanders are of one voice saying, don't restart this just militarily because it can't work. We can't force the straight open. You mentioned at the first, there's so many ways they could do it. You can't militarily compel that. It's just not, we don't have the resources for it. It just doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So they're saying don't try.
Yeah, we don't have the political will for it. If it was something like Hitler, we could mobilize enough. We could mobilize 2 million troops, United States, by instituting a draft or whatever. But there's just no political will for it. People would revolt. Why are we doing a draft to fight Iran? No. So it's really, and there's no appetite for the cost militarily and in human lives to seize enough of Iran's territory to open the Strait of Hormuz.
But then there's another whole group that are screaming, no, it will work. Trust me. And they'll try this. So he's kind of in the balance there. But there has to be a similar kind of discussion going on economically. And President Trump is a lot more knowledgeable personally for the economics than he is for the military side. So it would seem that
the reason Trump is screwed is because Iran was attacked last year during negotiations. Then there was the protest that was an attempt at regime change through U.S. Secretary of Treasury basically took actions that destroyed Iran's currency and caused huge inflation, caused protest. Then the United States handed out weapons to the protesters. So it was an attempt at a color revolution. Then, just when that didn't work, there was round 2 of bombing where we killed their supreme leader. So we are just going after them again and again and again. Until that's the way the U.S. empire, U.S. hegemony, deep state works. Is they target a country, and if that doesn't work, they target it harder. And that's just the way they keep on targeting. They put more and more pressure. And in most places, they fold. Like Syria, we did the whole civil war. We funded ISIS to, right here, Syria, to ISIS, and they genocided Christians. But ultimately, the civil war failed in dislodging Assad. The Syrian government survived. But we didn't stop. They still funding Syria, the rebel forces. They were still putting pressure on the Assad regime. And then eventually, finally, Syria collapsed. That's normally the way the deep state operates. Constant pressure. And if it doesn't work, just put more pressure. And then eventually it will work. Except in some places, like in Russia and Ukraine, it's not working. And they're putting more pressure. It's still not working. They're escalating right now, again, through the Baltic states and EU manufacturing drones on large scale to send them deep into Russia to destroy stuff. It's not working yet, but eventually Russia will respond. But anyway, that is the way the deep state operates. And it's like that with Iran. There's no thinking, is this going to work? Or even if we escalate, will it work? It's like, it'll put more pressure. And if that doesn't work, we can put even more pressure. That's just the thinking of it. And in some cases, it just will never work. But deep state just doesn't think like that. It's because it's not conspiracy with a like hard command structure. It's more like they're like the Zionists that are push for their dominance in the Middle East, and they'll just keep putting that is their purpose, to push for dominance in the Middle East. And so far, it's worked. They take out Syria, they took out Iraq, took out Libya, they took out Somalia, they caused civil war in Sudan. So far, the deep state strategy of using Israel to put pressure on all these countries without U.S. bases. Let's put it that way. Every country without U.S. bases in this region has been fucked over by the CIA and Israel and Mossad. And sometimes, like Iraq, directly by the U.S. military. So that's really just look at countries. Look which ones have military bases, and they they're good and subservient to the United States, and they don't get regime changed. And any country that doesn't bend the whale to us gets fucked over by like ISIS in Syria, our military in Iraq, bombing in Libya and rebels, etc. And now it's finally Iran's turn. But they're not. This is the strategy that's worked for the deep state in Israel everywhere else. There is no strategy B. There's no, okay, it didn't work in Syria, so the civil war didn't work, so let's stop. No, they just kept pressure until it worked. That's what they're going to try to do with Iran. They're going to try to up the pressure, and because that's the only way the whole deep state apparatus works. Even if it's like political suicide, even if it's going to have horrible consequences, there is no plan B for the deep state and Israel. That's an agent of the deep state in the United States.
That would augur against him listening to the war hawks in this case, and to do something that makes more sense. Do you have any knowledge or insight into what may be behind the scenes in the White House being told to him economically?
No, I mean, there was this Cy Hirsch article that came out, I think, yesterday, and he mentioned that from an Israeli contact that Trump suddenly has sort of realized maybe he didn't get the best of information from Bibi or wherever he was getting his information. I think, the assessment is Trump thought it was going to be like Venezuela, just didn't understand for some reason that Iran is totally a different.
Yeah, it was just stupidity on Trump's part. It's not bothering to know the world and know the consequences of knowing that Iran could close the Strait of Hormuz.
Beast from Venezuela. I mean, completely different. So now he sort of figured that out, and he has a tiger by the tail, and he doesn't know what to do. And again, his options now, the clock is ticking, and he's going to have to choose. Either he's going to have to concede some things that I think, from what I understand of him, are going to be difficult psychologically to do.
Not only psychologically, it's politically devastating. Basically, he'd have to capitulate to Iran. His entire war, all the economic pain and suffering we're feeling, he's justified it by preventing Iran from getting a nuke. What happens if Trump basically comes to a deal with Iran that doesn't do anything about the nuclear material, and 2 months from now, Iran gets a nuke? Iran gets this nuke at the same time as gas prices hit like $6-7 in the United States, and everyone's like, every time they go to the pump, we're paying $7 in gas just to fail to stop Iran from getting a nuke. It's devastating to Trump politically, and there's no way out from it. He can't surrender to Iran, but he's going to be forced to by the rest of the world once oil prices get high enough.
Or he's going to have to go hard against this, but he can't just continue to wait this out and hope that they're going to fold before we do, because actually it's not just the United States on the line, it's the whole world economy. And so China's going to begin to have some things to say about this. Russia's going to have some things to say about this. The whole rest of the world is going to have things to say about this. And it's been a little awkward watching Trump go, well, if we walk away from the strait, we'll let the rest of the world open it up.
No, the rest of the world is not okay with that.
Be fine. I'm not sure diplomatically that's like the right message to be sending when the rest of the world is facing the prospect of starvation, if not famine, based on the fact that
millions will die because of this Iran war, because of the starvation that will really hit next year.
30% of the world's nitrogen fertilizer went missing in action during the spring fertilizing season.
So let me ask you this: given all of that, if somebody from the White House were watching this show right now, they said, you know what, Chris needs to talk to the president here and give him some advice. If you could give him advice and he would just say yes to whatever you would say, what would you recommend as a course of action right now to get us back on a path to limit the damage?
I will say surrendering to Iran right now is, now that I think about it, the least damaging option for Trump, because if it's something he's going to be forced to do anyway by the rest of the world if it goes long enough, and then it just becomes, does he, with another 3 months of the Strait of Hormuz closed, that's that type of economic pain, plus the humiliation of surrendering to Iran, or having just have the Strait open now and having to endure the humiliation of surrendering to Iran. Only 2 months, the lower end, the absolute lowest end of the economic pain. So it would be the smarter thing to do, but it means accepting he's a failed president, the end of his legacy, the going down as a failure of a president. He's not prepared to do that.
Damage for this fall.
We would have to do whatever was required to make peace. We'd have to understand something that's going to be very difficult, which is that Iran actually holds the cards in this story.
It does.
And we're going to have to find out what their demands are. And they've been pretty clear about it, right? Hey, we get control over the Strait. We want reparations, right? That sounds like a giant L. You know, whoever pays reparations is usually the loser in the story, right?
Right.
Yes. And I was saying this, I didn't ever finish my point. What Iran wants is a loss. It's been fucked over by Trump in all these different times. How does it prevent United States from ever attacking Iran again? By inflicting a colossal loss on the president, Trump, to decide to attack Iran. And how does it do that? Well, reparations one way, but I think just them charging a toll would be a form of reparation. So we allowing them to do that, I think that'll be a compromise that was reached. We don't directly pay reparations. We just allow them to collect a toll and get their reparations that way. But we'll have to give grounds on the nuclear issue. We'll have to, like all of Trump's demands that he was demanding before the war, we won't get any of that. We'll have to release some of their sanctioned assets, give them back their money. And it's going to be a one-way deal in favor of Iran.
Typically. And they want, the reparations to include the idea that all the sanctions get lifted, frozen assets get lifted, and then they want guarantees that there aren't going to be any more such attacks. I don't know how you give that guarantee without putting a new leash on Israel, which no American president seems to have wanted to do since LBJ, right? So the
guarantee, I think, inflicting a humiliatingly a loss that is humiliating enough on Trump would serve as the guarantee of no future war, because no president will want to have to go through what Trump goes through. So I think that they will give ground on that issue. Russia and China will contribute, saying they'll pledge weapons that'll make it more costly for us to attack again. And by lifting sanctions, that'll strengthen Iran's economy, making them a stronger opponent. It'll be just so unattractive to attack them again that it'll be practically impossible. So I don't think they have to worry too much about that. This Iran war is the last one. It's going to be too costly for the world. The rest of the world, like this time around, Japan, South Korea, they basically, even while the United States was building up its forces, moving its aircraft carriers towards Iran, they didn't do anything. They just ignored it. After this, if the United States ever starts moving its aircraft carriers towards Iran, like Japan, South Korea, before a missile starts flying, we'll start putting pressure on the United States. What the fuck are you doing? You're not going to attack them again, are you? No, don't do that. Don't. Because this is going to hurt them so badly. Yeah, it just will be politically impossible for us to attack Iran again.
That's the wild card in all of this is, if the United States continues to arm and fund Israel in this story, I don't know how you make a security guarantee because of their history and how they've behaved. So that's probably going to be the hardest part about all of this, is figuring out how.
Removing U.S. bases from the regions, the ones that have already been destroyed, and not building them back up again. That could be Iran will compromise to some extent. They're not going to insist on U.S. stop its aid to Israel because they know that that's the hardest thing to demand for. They're instead say like U.S. military bases, get rid of those in the region. And if you remove all those U.S. military bases, I didn't mean to do that. All these here. that are right here, staging grounds for the attack on Iran. If the United States doesn't have that, it just simply becomes harder to attack Iran. Having a base that's right here, short distance for planes to fly back and forth and drop bombs. In terms of security guarantees, getting rid of all these air bases right around Iran's border would increase that'd be I think a security guarantee that Iran would accept.
To have wanted to do since LBJ, right? So that's the wild card in all of this is, if the United States continues to arm and fund Israel in this story, I don't know how you make a security guarantee because of their history in how they've behaved. So that's probably going to be the hardest part about all of this is figuring out how to put Israel back in some sort of a box, which again, no president's done in my lifetime. So I'm not real clear how that happens. Sounds hard.
Economic pain may have a way of introducing a way to do that, and just hope it's not too late. So bottom line here, if I can kind of summarize all this, there's no good plan here. There's no good path that we can take. And this number that we have right now is whatever is 102 as we're speaking right now, 101 at the moment. That number can't sustain. And by the fall, even if we get the magic unicorn method,
right,
we're going to be paying a lot more. That's the best case scenario. And then the worst case scenario is uncharted territory. We don't even know, but that is the range of our options at this point, no matter what. Is that a fair statement?
It's pretty fair, but there's one last sort of thing hanging out there that could happen, which is that if magically somehow Alberta's output and Venezuela's output and Mexico's output were all combined with our output, we could sit on that for a pretty good piece of time. But it means, of course, moving from that unipolar world to the multipolar world, the dust settles. China now has access to that whole region with Russia. We have access to this region, and we sort of have to content ourselves with that arrangement. That could work, right? But this whole idea that the United States, what's that?
What would that result in?
That can't work. I know I understand what he's proposing, but this whole region here is drowning in dollars. Iraq gets pallets of dollars from the Federal Reserve because they sell their dollars, their oil in dollars, and then people pay for that oil into the Federal Reserve's account there under control of Secretary of Treasury, and then the Secretary of Treasury decides, you're saying you want to pay this? Okay, no, we don't like that. Change it. Your new prime minister? No, we don't want that one. Change prime minister. Yes, no, not that one either. We'll let you know when you've chosen someone that's acceptable to us. That's the way we behave in Iraq. We own them through their currency. What he's suggesting is that we abandon this sphere of the world. Well, all the physical, you're talking billions and billions and billions of physical cash that are in this part of the world. What do you think is going to happen to all that cash? It's going to come back to the United States. It's going to cause radical inflation here. That's why we can't. That's why the United States empire cannot afford to retreat an inch. All these places are flooded with dollars. We lose control of one of them and they come up with their own currency and get rid of the dollars. That increases inflation everywhere else that uses the dollar. And enough places start doing that, start de-dollarizing, and it cascades into a currency collapse for the United States. And so his idea that we'd abandon this region, well, if we do that and they start using the Chinese yuan instead, all the dollars here, they're coming back to the United States and cause bad inflation.
Fall.
About as much oil as we would need to conduct ourselves for quite a while, particularly if Venezuela's made more business friendly and durable in some durable way. They actually have pretty significant oil deposits down there. It's going to take huge investment, hundreds of billions to bring it because of the
and probably years to bring it online.
Quality of the oil issues and all that. And Alberta has magnificently large, very, very large oil reserves in their bitumen or oil sands, as they call them, tar sands, as we used to call them. So between those, you actually have a pretty decent arrangement, but it would require all new geopolitical arrangements. Canada's not really that happy with us at present, right? So I'm not sure they're going to be sidling up to that part of the table.
Neither is Mexico.
Either is Mexico, right?
But even that, correct me if I'm wrong here, in terms of just in between now and September, just physically they couldn't ratchet up that much more production, or could they?
No. No, basically, Venezuela's back to just about 1 million barrels per day, which is that's all they can actually do without massive investment. That stuff's going to take years. They have what's called the Orinoco tar belt, which is literally you could get this stuff out of the ground with a spatula or maybe a heavy spoon. Right? It takes a lot. And then they have the Meres field, which is good. It's good stuff, and we've been importing that into the United States for decades and decades, right? And so we love that stuff. Goes it right into our refineries, makes the kind of products we like. And so, but that's tapped out at about 1 million barrels a day, and it's not going to get. It won't get higher without years of investment.
So the bottom line is, between now and September, there's no scenario where it comes out good for us. That's what I'm hearing. Do I hear right?
That's correct. Unless something changes. I mean, I'm telling you, we need those rainbows and unicorns. We need them tonight.
We do. Well, listen, Chris, thank you so much for.
Unfortunately, I don't think there's going to be any rainbows and unicorns. This was a great video. This will be on YouTube. Like and subscribe. Come watch on Kick or Twitch. And I'll see you next video. Bye.